everybody, once again. Glad to be back. Today we're looking at a game between Sergey Karjakin with the white pieces and Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. This game was a rapid game that took place in Nice, France in 2008. Again, Karjakin with the white pieces, Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces. That's right, Carlsen played in Alekhine's defense for this rapid game. Karjakin continued with e5, the most principled response. So d4, d6, knight f3, d takes e5, knight takes e5. There he has this move better than d takes e5. And the basic reason why is this pawn can come under attack and sometimes be proven weak. For instance, after a quick bishop g4, and let's just say let's make some imaginary moves up. Bishop e2, e6. Let's say castle, c6. Let's say c4. Perhaps knight e7, queen b3, queen b6, and versus h3, takes, and knight d7. And you can see the e pawn is under tremendous pressure, and in this position there's no way to defend it. That's just an example of why knight e5 is the preferred capture. Although I've seen some games with the e pawn with the d pawn capturing, but it's definitely theory, and most grandmasters will play this move, knight takes e5. So c6, of course there's other ways, g6 can be played. There's other ways black can play this position. Bishop f5 has been tried, but c6 is again the most principled response. White often plays several moves here also. Sometimes I play bishop c4, bishop d3, and bishop e2 has been played here. One of the ideas behind c6 is that after the respectable looking move c4, that black has in mind to play knight b4, and then if the natural looking a3 with the idea of kicking this knight back to a6, then black has a surprise. He plays queen d4, captures the pawn, and attacks the knight on e5 simultaneously. This also has the added benefit of destroying white's center, which is exactly what black wants to do. So as you can see, the queen is on prise. So queen takes d4, but then you have this fork here. Knight comes in a c2 check, and after king d1, knight takes d4, and black is practically winning in this position. So a3 is really the culprit there. c4 is an accessory. c4 can be played, but it's not the best move. After knight b4, instead of a3, which is the big error, perhaps a move like bishop e3 can be played, but then bishop f5, and black is okay. Knight a3 is forced, and the knight on the rim is dim, and this gives black an equal game. Knight d7, and black has no worries. Alright, let's get back to the game, because this is not really a theoretical discussion here. So d takes e5, knight takes e5 from Karjakin, c6 from Carlsen, and bishop e2, which is the main move. White is just going to develop quietly and enjoy his space advantage. Secure it, and slowly squeeze black. Knight d7. Of course, you always hear that in cramped position you want to trade pieces, and also black would love to bring this d pawn to the e5 so that he can attack it, along with trading this knight. Karjakin simply moves back, and it's not really a waste of time, because again, this knight here is not really developed and will have to move again to free this bishop. So white avoids the trade of pieces and keeps black somewhat cramped. Okay, so knight 7 to f6, so he alleviates that and frees the bishop to come out. Castles, and bishop g4. Karjakin plays h3, and Carlsen gives up the bishop here early in the game. So we can see already that Karjakin is better already. Besides having the bishop here, he also has nice control of the center, easy development. His rook is going to come to e1, and eventually this pawn is going to come to c4, driving this knight off the d5 square. And basically white's plan is just to take over the board and have a python-like grip over the position, and to prove that black's strategy of giving up the center early in the game is indeed a flawed strategy. So let's follow the continuation. So after bishop takes f3, e6 is played, c4, and there it is. The knight is driven to a worse position, and he attacks his pawn, which is easily protected with b3, bishop e7, bishop b2. So we can see that structurally black's position is just fine. Problem is the space. Look how much white dominates in the center, and these pawns just have a lot of influence over these squares. So it's hard for black to really get any kind of counterplay or activity in the position when white has such a dominating pawn structure and setup, and the two bishops to boot. So this is a great position for white to have. So after castle, knight d2. He could have played knight c3, but he doesn't want to block the bishop. He plays knight d2, a5, and Carlsen wants to activate this rook, possibly to push this pawn down, perhaps exchange there, and maybe exchange rooks, or possibly even to cramp white on the diagonal. Karjakin is having none of this and plays the move a3. So if a4, then he can just bypass with b4. What's instructive in this game is how Karjakin shuts down the attempts at activity, counterplay from black. Queen c7, Queen e2, Rook f e8. Now g3, and that's to keep black from using that square. Rook a d8, Bishop g2, Knight b d7. And it looks like Magnus is trying to engineer a break. Of course, to free his position, he needs to get in a move like e5 or c5 if possible. And Magnus is doing a good job at maximizing um, his piece placement, but unfortunately, it's just that the position is not really a good position to play from in the first place. So he's doing the best he can from an inferior position. And again, that's why you don't really see the Alekhine's defense at the highest levels, because this space advantage, this type of position that white gets is just a slam dunk for these players at this level, above 2700. You can't really give a strong player like that all this space, two bishops, and really expect to win the game. You'd be lucky to draw and be struggling the whole game. And then what makes it even worse is that black really doesn't have any counterplay, so it's not even like white has to think about any kind of dangerous tactics from black. He's just kind of squeezing Carlsen in his position. So all white has to do is basically stay alert and watch the pawn breaks on e5 and c5 to make sure black doesn't free himself. So Karjakin plays knight f3. Again, you got the bishop, queen, knight, and this pawn all concentrated on the e5 square. So this break is not happening. So after knight f3, queen b6 is played. Just a one move threat, attacking the b3 pawn. Queen c2, knight f8. Magnus is desperately looking for some type of counter play. Knight e5 is played. Knight g6. Knight d3 again. Karjakin does not allow Magnus to trade and wants his position to stay cramped. So now Magnus lashes out on the king side with h5. He has to do something or just be squeezed to death. So he's lashing out. Karjakin just simply brings the rook to the center. Rook a d1. Queen c7. So we see some kind of ideas, perhaps for h4, and trying to attack white's queen side. So after queen c7, f4 is played. So he just basically deads black on advancing the e pawn or attacking down on g3, period. Now if h4 was to be played, then simply g4. So he kind of just stops that plan in its tracks. Bishop d6 and knight e5. Now Karjakin is willing to trade when he would get a great advantage by having the pawn on the e5 square, which will give him great attacking chances on the king side. Now this is just a liability. So after knight e5, knight e7. c5. And now Karjakin destroys black's opportunity to break at e5 or c5. So he's now just strangling Magnus Carlsen. Magnus takes and gives up his other bishop. So bishop takes e5. F takes e5. And so now the F file is open, and he has a beautiful diagonal pointing straight to the king. And there's a weak pawn. So knight fd5. And look at these rooks, are horrible. No prospects. Queen, no prospects. And although the knight has a home on d5, he really has no place to go. The only square Karjakin has to worry about right now is knight to d3, which is easily parried, and the knight coming to f5 can be parried by a move like g4. But the knights are really the only two pieces that are in the game for black right now. So after knight fd5, queen e2, defending the threat of the knight coming here, but also attacking this weak pawn at the same time. And that's a good lesson, that when you can, if you must make a defensive move, try to combine it with a threat at the same time. So after queen e2, the other knight jumped in to f5. So again, this threat is renewed. So therefore, Karjakin doesn't rush to grab the pawn on h5, but instead he brings his rook to d3, so that if the knight does try to jump in to e3, he'll just give up his rook for the two knights. Then black will really have no activity. So after rook d3, this pawn is in danger. So either Carlsen is going to play g6 or play h4 as he did in the game. Now here, unlike a few moves ago where g4 was an option, but now g4 is not an option, because now the knight will just hop in there to g3. So now Karjakin just takes. So g takes h4, b6. Magnus understands he can take this pawn later. It's a weak pawn, so he is desperately trying to get his other pieces back in the game. And so he decides he's going to try to chip down white's powerful pawn structure. So at the b6, though, bishop e4, and now the combination of bishop and rook is threatening to win the pawn. Magnus takes, bishop takes c5, and d takes c5. Queen e7, and Magnus is playing like a desperate person has to play. He's willing to take chances, so he's willing to give up a pawn here on f5, but he's threatening to capture here with check, and he's also threatening to capture the pawn on h4. So Karjakin takes, bishop takes f5, e takes f5, rook takes f5, and he takes the pawn on h4, although he could have taken this one too. And now this square has to be watched, as this is now a concern of white's. Karjakin played bishop c1, which is an interesting move. Queen f2 is probably better. You're threatening this with the rook and queen battery, and you're threatening the queen itself. And he doesn't really want to trade queens, but if he went back, for instance, to e7, then this other rook that's coming on g3 would be very, very strong, especially with the idea of pushing this pawn and attacking on the g7 square. So I think black would almost be forced to go into an endgame that he doesn't want to go into. Nevertheless, this is a rapid game, and time trouble might have been a factor at some point. So Karjakin played bishop c1, which guards this square, does the job, because the knight wanted to come here and fork the king and queen, but now we have the bishop here to counteract that. Queen h7, just attacking the rook right here. See, Karjakin plays rook d f3. Again, following the theme of playing a defensive move mixed with an attack move at the same time. Whenever possible, try to do that. To clarify that again, like I said earlier, in this case, Carlsen is attacking Karjakin's rook on f5, and he has to defend it. Instead of making a totally defensive move, for instance, rook to f3, right, which is just a pure defensive move, Karjakin played the other rook, rook d to f3. And this is a stronger move. Why? Because it protects the rook, right? It does its defensive duty, but also contains an attacking motif and threatens to win the pawn on f7. So that move is more economical and efficient than just simply retreating the rook in a defensive posture. This way, by doubling the rooks on the f file, white has the initiative, and black has to deal with it, has to find a way to defend now. So after rook df3, again, Carlsen, being a desperate man, plays the move knight c3. And his idea is to try to drum up some kind of mating attack against the white's exposed king. So with that move, knight to c3, the rook is now free to come down to the first rank. This bishop is unprotected, and there's a cool tactical idea here, and basically you see the knight is unprotected. So the idea is that, of course, if rook takes c3, then this rook is now unprotected once again, and black would win the game right away. So that's a slick move by Magnus Carlsen here. So again, what do? We know we have to move the queen. But again, instead of just making some ordinary retreating move that contains no problems for the opponent, we try to find a threat. So what does Karjakin do? He makes the defensive move. He moves the queen out of the way, but where does he move the queen? He moves the queen to c4, where now the knight is actually threatened, and he renews the threat on f7. So we're seeing that theme come up again. about not making totally defensive moves when you don't have to. So now rook d1 happens, check. We see this bishop is unprotected. King h2. Now this shows the value of moving the queen to c4, because having this threat lingering over black's head, f7 pawn, makes it impossible for black to take this bishop on c1 without loss, because he would get mated. After queen takes f7, king h8, and queen takes e8, and queen g8, and then rook h5. That's why it pays to keep your opponent occupied with threats. So after king h2, Carlsen played the move queen g6, which defends f7 somewhat anyway, because queen takes f7 can be played, but in this case it would be a mistake if queen takes f7 here, then queen takes f7, rook takes f7, and then rook takes c1, and guess what? White is down a piece. So the idea of queen g6 is real simple. Has to come down here and mate by playing queen g1 next move, if he can move. So rook g5 from Karjakin, defending against the threat. Remember, the bishop's right here, so now the queen is on prise. So Carlsen has to find a good move, because he has to move from the defense of the f7 square, but he has to do it in a way where when he moves the queen just doesn't, the other queen just doesn't come into capture, because then this rook will fall. So Carlsen finds queen c2 check, but again, as our theme has been for this whole game, instead of making a purely defensive move like king g3, which actually is losing after knight e4 check, but just to give you an example, Karjakin played a attacking slash defensive move, fulfilling that old saying that your best defense is your offense. And what he does is he protects against the threat, but at the same time generates a threat of his own in rook g2, attacking the queen. And now with the threat against the queen and f7, and subsequently the rook on e8, and the king itself, because after queen takes f7, we're not going to pick up this rook, but we're going to pick up this pawn and mate the king. With all those threats at the doorstep of black, Magnus Carlsen had to resign. And that was it. And I hope you enjoyed that game. And please like and subscribe and comment. And I will see you on the next video.